Welcome to the Sharkpreneur Podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Green. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Green is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the Sharkpreneur Podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Green. With me is my long-lost friend, Mitch Carson. I'm super excited to have you on today. Thanks so much for joining us, Mitch.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Seth. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. So let's go back in time a little bit. Tell everybody a little bit about the cool stuff you're up to in the world these days.
I help speakers, authors, coaches, and consultants, mostly authors and speakers, get on television guaranteed. I mean, you can see on my backdrop here, those are the television channels or networks that I work with here in the Las Vegas market. I had a similar program when I lived in Asia, but the pandemic changed me to get me repatriated to the United States. I believe when we met, I was living in Manila at that time. So I had a program like this overseas, and that's what kind of gives me distinction, does give me distinction, not kind of, gives me distinction in the marketplace, is my media placements are guaranteed.
Well, obviously, anything with a guarantee on it makes it that much more attractive. Love the risk reversal. Jay Abraham would be proud. Tell me what you mean by what is the placement and what does your guarantee mean?
Let me go back. I'm more of a Dan Kennedy fan than Jay. So I
Fair enough. So Dan Kennedy would be proud.
Yes. Well, yeah, I was in his mastermind for years. The guarantee is first finding out what your unique message is. That's where most people have a challenge. Once we identify that, then my wizardry in terms of polishing your stone to make you shine so the producers on these 5 networks will accept you as a guest because they take a risk. That's why it's all about reputation. They take a risk to feature you. You took, albeit a little bit of a risk today, even though this is a recorded session, it'll be then broadcast. I can't take that kind of a risk. These are live interviews. So if I mess up, guess what happens to my reputation? So I make sure that someone speaks in sound bites, concisely, all within a time frame of 4 minutes or less, with the questions that are already discussed and covered by the producers of these respective shows.
Understood. And then you've talked about the ones you're locally in Vegas. A lot of our listeners probably aren't in Vegas. Does your process work around the country?
It works. I've gotten clients on stations in other states. I've had clients on TV stations in 16 different countries. So this works any market that I have, worked and produced events. So that's where the impetus of this was to put butts in seats as an events producer. That's my background.
Well, let's go into that because that brings up my next question, which is let's go back in time and talk about how you got into doing this and created this process in the first place.
Well, as a professional speaker now approaching 40 years in July, the biggest challenge I learned from first being a speaker, then turn events producer was you got to put butts in seats. And someone may be great at content creation and an expert in their niche, yet they aren't marketable. They're not credible. They don't have a podcast. They don't have a YouTube channel that's filled out, a LinkedIn profile that's filled out, an all-star status. They may not have had any media or a book written. I know you're a multi-book author. You get it, Seth. And if they aren't branded properly, very difficult to put a button seat or to keep an attendee in an event interested in this person because they're not interesting. And if they're not credentialed properly, if they don't have the proper arrows in their quiver, they're never going to get a shot off with the audience. It's all about packaging. They're either a Tiffany box or they're Target, and not even Target. So I get people in a blue and white Tiffany box with a nice ribbon, very expensive stone inside, so they can charge higher prices and also create the traction to get people into events to listen to you. Because if you don't have the proper personal branding, if you don't drive up in a Ferrari, you're not going to get the hot blonde. It's just not going to happen. Or brunette, if you fancy. But you get my drift.
I get your drift. So let's talk about that. What are the table stakes? What do you need? What are those credentials that we need in order to be able for your program to work?
For today, you've got to have a clear focus. Now, I've taken people who don't have a book. The easiest way for me to get somebody covered on television and radio shows and in print media, yes, print media, in online and offline, because all of that is part of my package that I offer people. It's all guaranteed. It's not a monthly deal. It's one-time fee, fraction of what they paid other publicists. But it first starts with your message. Are you clear? Are you able to become, and do you feel that you can be the perceived expert in your market? If you don't mentally have that, I'm not your guy. If you want that, and you already have a podcast, for example, which is another arrow in that quiver, which is different, a little bit different, but network television, now this is just my opinion, I'm a bit biased because I have a show here on NBC in Las Vegas that I broadcast. Television is the number one credible platform. Then there are others. Then you may go to radio, radio podcasts put in the same category. And if you have a book, makes it easy because you have a unique thumbprint and nobody has your book. Easy to talk about, great ammunition for a host to discuss and dive into your book. Because that gives me 30 minutes of content. Mike, you're doing your podcast when I have my TV show here. It's called Amazing Authorities, and I cover all of this. And I've got a book. I've already got the questions laid out that I need to ask because I'll have read it or at least skimmed it quickly to find those gems.
Awesome. That all makes sense. Now, I would assume you have people that you know and that you work with and you trust, so that if somebody doesn't have some of those things, you can send them to the appropriate places to help them get that done so that they are then camera ready.
They're camera ready. They're media trained because I've got to work with everybody before I put them on the media, on TV, unless they've got vast experience on television. It's not podcasting. It's not radio. Television is a completely different platform than podcasts. We can have long conversations here and deep dive. You cannot on television. It's 4 minutes max. Certain stations are 2.5 minutes. Laser focus. No babbling, no all of those things are eliminated before I even put your feet on the ground. Cannot happen on television. You can't yourself to success. You'll yourself to failure. Or my favorite, like and right.
So that makes a lot of sense. I know you've been doing this for a very long time. What are you, and you've got some incredible results. Can you share one or two with us in terms of what type of results that those people were able to get? What type of appearances did they get? And then most importantly, what happened after?
Great. No, I'll be happy to go through that. One of my most recent clients is a lady named Twanda E. Young. She is Googleable. That's a verb now. You can look her up. She's a retired brigadier general from the U.S. Army. She's African-American and she's 5 feet tall. I create that picture of her. She was entirely credible. So she's a little Mighty Mouse power pack. So I put her on, she was covered on all of these stations when she came here to Vegas about 3 weeks ago, and she had a book. So she was properly credentialed. Everybody wanted to use her. Now, as a result of using this television, it added to her already impressive credentials. She's got a monument from her college in South Carolina, where she's an alumni, of her. Big monument out in front of the school walking in. So this gal's got it. She just didn't have TV. She didn't have radio. So we got her covered. Now she's booked solid all the way through September for speaking gigs, paid keynote speaking gigs. I explained to her, she bought the concept. She's very logic-based. As a military general, she was in Afghanistan overseeing 5,000 troops, or 50,000 in her day. And this woman gets logic and saw, okay, this is going to credentialize me, and I'm going to use it to get into higher paid speaking gigs. And it did exactly that. Within just a few weeks after, I said, here's what you need to do next. She was teachable, she listened, and she implemented. Teachable, implemented, and and boom, profits came after that. She's literally booked solid all the way through September.
That is absolutely awesome. With all the success you've achieved and helped your clients, what's your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge is getting people who realize how valuable this is. And it's kind of funny. It's almost, it's demographic or age related. The specific is the age group. Baby boomers get it, okay, of which I'm part of that cohort. People of your generation, Seth, possibly get it. People under 30, oh, is that YouTube? They just don't understand. It's the major leagues of media coverage. And it's the stepping stone to success. Who are the ones that have the power of the pen to sign big checks? The older people. And this is lifetime credibility. None of these logos are fake. There are those services out there that will submit a press release for you to Fox News and say, I was covered on Fox. A well-known speaker whom I will not mention, you know who he is, Seth, said, Mitch, I was covered on CNN. I said, oh, really? When? He said, well, it was on my TV and I sat on my TV. So I was covered on, I was on CNN. He thought it was funny. I didn't, because everything I do is real, verifiable, credible, irrefutable proof that you, in fact, are a media darling. That's where I live. You can't fake it. I mean, I'm sure you were familiar with those people that sell those logos on that basis.
I am. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
I like the fact that people they accelerate their feeling of worthiness about themselves. The biggest takeaway is when someone changes and transforms. And when they write a book, they get on media, albeit the different platforms, they feel they deserve, Seth. They feel they deserve. That's the major obstacle to major success. You have to feel it, you have to want it, you have to feel it, and credentialize yourself. Because then the doors are open. They're always there, but now they're open and you can see it. I think people have blinders on. They don't see what's possible until the proof is in front of them. Getting covered in Entrepreneur Magazine, getting in Forbes. There are those people that make it happen, or the others that dream about it and say, oh, he got on there, he must be something. Well, people get to be something. Provable, irrefutable. It's almost like when you have a college degree, nobody can take that away from you. You've been on major networks. It opens the doors to the ultimate media, let's just call it media in the sky, which is New York City. There's no bigger placement in the world. So Las Vegas is a great stepping stone for people that don't have the experience or want to freshen up their media. And that's why I offer what I offer. I mean, it's the Harvard. New York is the Harvard. This is at least a university level. It's a great market, a very profitable market for all of these stations. That's why, and it's hard to get into. Fortunately, I have the relationships with all the producers here because I bring a lot of people to them and I advertise with my other clients.
Awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate your time. We know it's incredibly valuable. For our folks watching and listening who want to learn more, where is the best place for us to send them?
They can go to, well, I'm glad you asked. Let me put it in the chat here. They can book an appointment if this is something that interests them, and we can talk about their media experience.
All right, that URL to go to for those of you listening or watching is getinterviewedguaranteed.com/meet with Mitch. Again, getinterviewedguaranteed.com/meet with Mitch. No spaces. This has been Seth Green for Sharkpreneur with Mitch Carson from Get Interviewed Guaranteed. Mitch, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Seth. Glad to be here.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.